Going rogue today with an unexpected White House meeting and what he claims is new information on surveillance of the Trump transition team. Back with my panel now. So David Chalian, House Intelligence Committee Chairman David Nunes, surprised everyone by running over to the White House to inform them that some Trump team communications were picked up through normal incidental collection. Before speaking to his own committee, the ranking Democratic member Adam Schiff and others are fuming. And to be clear, this is not wiretapping. It's not related to Russia. So bring us up to speed on what took place today.
Yeah, and it's not just Democrats. Even Republican Jeff Flake, senator from Arizona, saying that this seemed to be sort of against protocol here. Devin Nunes, you're right, did catch everyone by surprise. But as you said, he got a hold of information from a source, and we do not know what is the content of that information other than he says it was completely legal. So, you know, sort of FISA court approved, surveilling a foreign entity, and an American gets caught up in that conversation. That's the incidental collection. That person is usually not known unless somebody goes and asks for that person to be unmasked. But he seemed to think that either Donald Trump or some family members or other people pertaining to Trump were involved in this and got caught up in this, and he wanted to get that information to the White House. As you know, Donald Trump took this as he said, somewhat vindicated. He felt somewhat vindicated by this information from Devin Nunes, even though it doesn't really vindicate because it has nothing to do with,
quite vindicate him at all,
what Donald Trump was tweeting about that Saturday morning in early March.
It doesn't even say that. By the way, and I keep hearing this, and it infuriates me, none of this information, not even Nunes, it doesn't say that Trump people or U.S. citizens were being targeted. It's saying incidental collection of information, that someone else, a foreign agent, was a subject, and that other people's information or their conversations were incidentally collected or listened to, which is not illegal, which happens all the time. So I'm trying to figure out what is new about this and how is it pertinent to this investigation.
Well, Don, I can say I think one thing the press missed in his press conference were his very, very first words. If you go back and listen to his tape, what he said is, yesterday at the beginning of our hearing, I asked people to come forward if they had any information on surveillance of American citizens. That was a warning shot to the FBI, because I believe that they had things they had told the Intel Committee privately that were acceptable to be told in publicly, but Comey did not say that.
But there's nothing that shows in this information, Congressman, with all due respect, that U.S. citizens were being targeted or that they were the subject of this.
He said it had nothing to do with Russia. He said the information that he has seen had nothing to do with Russia. So the question was...
But the information he has seen has nothing to do with U.S. citizens being targeted or surveilled.
Yes, they do.
No,
they were Trump transition people. Why were they being spied on?
It was incidental communications. Mr. Mudd, can you please explain this to people? It's not that difficult. And Jack, you're spinning. That's not what he said. Go ahead, Philip.
Do you mind if I break down into tiers first? Let me look at the two pieces of this. The President of the United States indicated in tweets 2 weeks ago that his predecessor illegally collected information against American citizens in Trump Tower. That's illegal. That does not involve a U.S. court, and that involves directing federal agencies to do something that people like me were to resign over. Okay, stop for a moment. For decades, foreign diplomats, officials will be intercepted by American intelligence agencies. When that individual is intercepted, that is occasionally approved, depending on the circumstances, by a U.S. court, by a U.S. FISA court. When that interception of that foreign individual takes place, occasionally they're talking to an American citizen. That is collateral collection, incidental collection. That American citizen is not being surveilled. The foreigner is, and the American called him.
When that happens, they don't get unmasked. They don't get unmasked, though, right?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
But who asked them to be
unmasked?
Jack,
let him explain, and then you can go in. Go ahead, please.
When there's an investigation underway, for example, by the FBI against that foreign official, the FBI obviously is going to say, who was that Russian, Chinese, or Iranian official talking to? As part of the investigation, we have to know. That process is formal. It's called unmasking. I now need to know the name of that U.S. person, and that happens, Don, all the time.
Okay, Philip, but why would they need to be unmasked if it had nothing to do with Russia? Because supposedly this was about Russia.
We don't know that they were unmasked.
Time out.
None of us knows what was in those
that's what Devin
conversations.
Nunes said. He said they were unmasked.
No,
and
he
remember,
didn't.
Maybe Devin
He
Nunes is the one who
absolutely did.
unmasked them because no one knew this information.
His question was, why were they unmasked and who ordered them to be unmasked?
Can we just stand back a second and look at the absurdity of the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee going to the White House and making a public statement and making all of this public today? I mean, this is not how you conduct an investigation when you're the head of the House Intelligence Committee.
It's not. Well, what about the head of the FBI going public with all the stuff he's been doing, frankly, starting with Hillary Clinton and the investigation of her? So these are unusual times.
You're upset about Hillary Clinton now?
But I got to say this, it's not like the ranking member. It's not like the ranking member and other members, Democrat and Republicans, aren't going out publicly and talking.
But even if that was
I mean,
true, Jack, you know, two wrongs don't make a right. I mean, really, that's not an argument. You have to admit the way he handled this was completely
the White House is the subject of the investigation.
I think a member of Congress is going to be on the show tonight who's on the Intel Committee.
Yeah, stand by, everyone. Here's John McCain.
What I think the reason why I'm calling for this select committee or a special committee is I think that this back and forth and what the American people have found out so far, that no longer does the Congress have credibility to handle this alone. And I don't say that lightly.
David Chalian.
I mean, that is a man of authority, obviously, who perhaps can begin to sway his own party. I still think it's going to be a tough sell for a lot of Republicans who want to protect Trump in the White House on this still right now, to call for a special committee or somehow outside independent investigator, because that goes in ways they can't always control. But I do think what Devin Nunes did today was basically gut the House intelligence process. I think it's very hard for an American voter, citizen at home watching all of this unfold after seeing the antics today to actually trust anything coming out of the House Intelligence Committee as sort of an impartial arbiter.
I was watching it. I have to tell you, Jack, I was watching it and I was sort of cringing for the guy. But you know the saying us kids say, he played himself.
Well, Don, I really think it goes back to the fact that he was extremely irritated that Comey didn't come forward to.
So why wouldn't he go to the investigating committee first before going to the White House, which is the subject of the investigation, and going to the press, which the Trump administration and his surrogates always say, oh, this stuff gets in the media, why do you go to the media, why is everybody spreading this? Why not go to his investigating committee and say to Mr. Schiff, hey, listen, we have this information, we need to discuss it, and how do we move forward from here? Instead, he left everyone in the dark. Are you okay with that? Because it seems that his credibility is in question now.
I'm going to assume that Adam Schiff and all the committee members already knew this information, and
They did not.
Well, hold on.
Each of them, every single one of them said they did not know this information. And what's mind-boggling to me is that the man who is sitting in the White House, who is the leader of the free world, did not have access to this information when all he has to do is pick up a phone or have somebody else call and bring it over.
He's interfering. And the minute he does that, he's accused of interfering. It's like Bill Clinton, if he ever just arbitrarily, say, got on an airplane with somebody like
You don't think he's interfering in American business by tweeting out a false tweet about the former administration committing a felony, the former president? You don't think that's interfering in the American judicial or the American democracy?
I think a tweet that goes out publicly is not the same as calling somebody privately, like the Attorney General or the FBI or the Intel Committee.
It's much worse.
But let me say this. I really and truly, let me just say this.
Misinformation. Isn't that much worse?
I have spoken to a senior member of the Intel Committee after the hearing yesterday, and they were very
Did they leak classified
with the
information to you? Should you have spoken to them? Was it on background or what?
No, I don't want to be a felon. We already have enough leakers in this town and enough felons. But and I'm accused of all other things already. But what they were very displeased with is the fact that Comey had been saying some things privately that he could have said publicly, and he did not say them for reasons unknown. Comey is a very clever guy, and you know, one week he's the Democrats guy, the next week week he's a Republicans
What
guy.
are you talking about,
Well, what does
Jack?
that have to do with him not sharing it with Adam Schiff? That doesn't make sense. He's upset with Comey,
Because
so he
I-
doesn't
'cause
share
I-
the
I know what
information
Jack's
with
talking
Schiff.
about here. I know what you're talking about, Jack, here. The Nunez and others are upset because they got a private briefing from Comey, and Nunez and Schiff had a private briefing from Comey. They know with a lot of detail what the FBI investigation is all about. And I think Nunez was a little miffed on Monday that Comey, when he was asked questions, would not rule in or rule out certain subjects of the investigation, how high up it went. And I think Nunez obviously couldn't say what he knew because he had a private briefing from Comey. And I think that's what you're talking about, Jack, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And some
how
of
does
was
that
public.
justify what he did today, though? He's
Because
mad
Jack,
at
it made him
Comey?
look like, as someone who was on the transition team, as someone who is trying to lead a nonpartisan investigation, it made him look like a shill for the White House.
I believe that Devin Nunes is a man of honor. I think right now, and I say the same for Adam Schiff, but I do believe that the whole Intel Committee has been way too public with this whole thing. The political bait is out there, that, you know, the opportunity to go out and talk about something. I know how it is. I've seen it go on over and over again in all kinds of committees, and I think they really should be sequestered into some quiet room, and everybody ought to get out there.
They do come back, right? We have another block of these guys. Okay, and we get. Because I'm wondering if all the time damaging to Hillary Clinton's campaign. That's according to U.S. officials. Let's get right to that breaking news now. Pamela Brown and Shimon Prokupecz, they both join me. They broke this story along with our justice correspondent, Evan Perez. Good evening to both of you. Pamela, first, I'm going to start with you. What are you learning?
So, Don, we've learned that the FBI has information that indicates associates of President Donald Trump communicated with suspected Russian operatives to possibly coordinate the release of information damaging to Hillary Clinton's campaign, according to U.S. officials. Now, FBI Director James Comey made his bombshell announcement, as you'll recall, on Monday before Congress, that the FBI is investigating the Trump campaign's ties to Russia. So the FBI is now reviewing this information, which includes human intelligence, travel, business, and phone records, and accounts of in-person meetings, according to these officials. And the information is raising the suspicions of FBI counterintelligence investigators that the coordination may have taken place, though officials have cautioned that the information is not conclusive and that the investigation is still ongoing. The FBI would not comment, nor would the White House, though Trump officials have denied that there is any evidence of collusion. Don?
All right, well, Shimon, to you now. This gives us more insight into what Comey knew when he spoke on Monday, correct?
Absolutely, Don. It certainly does. If you recall, in addition to Comey saying the investigation includes looking at connections to Trump associates, he also explained what investigators are looking at, what exactly they're doing, and how they came to this point. Take a listen.
Don't you need some action or some information besides just attending a meeting, having been paid to attend a conference, that a picture was taken, or that you traveled to a country before you're open to investigation for counterintelligence by the FBI?
The standard is, I think there's a couple different at play, a credible allegation of wrongdoing or a reasonable basis to believe that an American may be acting as an agent of a foreign power.
Well, that's right, Don. So one law enforcement official said the information that they now have suggests, quote, people connected to the campaign were in contact, and it appeared they were giving the thumbs up to release information when it was ready, we're told by sources. But other U.S. officials who spoke to CNN say it's premature to draw that inference from the information that they've so far gathered. It's largely circumstantial, and there's still a lot more work to be done. And we're told that the FBI cannot yet prove that collusion took place. But the information suggesting this information is now suggesting that collusion is a large focus of their investigation, the official said.
Okay. Pamela, I want to get back to you now and ask you, but what sort of coordination is under investigation here?
So we're told, Don, that mostly the FBI is focused on the stolen and published emails by WikiLeaks, including the DNC and Clinton campaigns, John Podesta, that all started last July, as you'll recall. And the U.S. officials said the information being investigated was not drawn from the leaked dossier of unverified information compiled by a former British intelligence official, compiled for Trump's political opponents, though the dossier also suggested coordination between Trump campaign associates and Russian operatives.
Simone, do we know who exactly is being investigated?
We don't. Our sources and the officials and the investigators that we've spoke to who are familiar with this investigation have not told us. But we do know that 4 people, some of the people who have been scrutinized, that were sort of part of the Trump campaign and are sort of part of the Trump world, Mike Flynn, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, and obviously Carter Page. They have had some contacts with the Russians, we're told by U.S. officials, and the intelligence community sort of became concerned about it, and their communications, their contact with those folks are now being scrutinized. All 4 have denied improper contacts. And also, Don, I want to say that some of the issues that FBI investigators are now facing is that it's become a little more difficult to learn what the Russians are doing. Some of the intelligence gathering has become difficult because the folks within the Russian community, sort of out in Russia, have changed the way they're communicating amongst each other and with some of the folks here. So that's created some problem for investigators who are trying to sort of gather more intelligence, figure out what was going on here. Don.
All right. Shimon Prokopez with the breaking news, Pamela Brown, and our Evan Perez also breaking this information. Thank you all. We appreciate it. When we come back, now I want to bring in, I should say, political analyst Kirsten Powers, political director David Chalian. Jack Kingston is a former senior advisor to the Trump campaign, CNN political commentator Ryan Lizza, and CNN counterterrorism analyst Philip Mudd. My goodness, so much to unpack here. David, why don't I start with you? This is a stunning development tonight. The lingering question out on all of this is, what, if anything, did President Trump know, and when did he know it?
Well, those are certainly 2 key questions that will, sort of be going at for the long duration of this investigation. There's no doubt about that, Don, but it is a really significant story tonight because this entire story, since it started, has been about, has there been coordination between Trump campaign officials or Trump associates and Russia geared at Russia's interference with the American election to defeat Hillary Clinton and get Donald Trump elected? This is the first step in really seeing that some of that potential coordination is indeed under investigation. We learned from Comey on Monday that this is what they were looking at, but this now even goes a step further to say they have some suggestion that this does potentially exist. This is just, again, very early in this process. There's a long road to go here, but I think you're right that each drip, drip, drip of information begs the question, what did President Trump or then candidate Trump know, if anything at all, and when did he learn of it? Yeah.
And to be clear, Phil, I'm going to go to you, but the report says that coordination may have taken place. Officials cautioning that it's not conclusive yet, but what kind of trouble may they be in?
Let's step back here. Let's look at both sides of the coin, depending on which side of the political aisle you're on. Let me read some of the words we heard. People connected with the campaign, information that suggests something, information that suggests that people may have coordinated. Very loose language, Don. Right. If you want to poke a hole in this, you're going to say, I need evidence, I don't need supposition. On the other hand, let's talk about something that nobody's talking about. This investigation has been going on for many months. The FBI director got burned in the fall, and going back to last summer when he revealed an investigation at Hillary Clinton, then had to open it and reclose it. Now he goes back to the Hill months after this investigation has been opened and again says, we have information that we have to tell you has led us to open an investigation against President Trump's team. I look at that and say there is no way he did that unless after months he looked at the information they're collecting and saying, this is pretty ugly. There's smoke here, but he does not reveal that unless he's saying this has to be exposed to the American public. That's serious.
Ryan, the fallback for the White House and for the administration has been, well, the leakers. How do you think they're going to respond to this? They can't just simply blame the leakers this time.
I think they'll respond saying, well, this is nothing new. We know that the FBI has been looking into this. This all week they've just basically been dismissing any kind of reports. Don, and maybe Phil can help with this. I have a sort of naive and maybe counterintuitive question about this is, if you are one of these people that the FBI is looking at what point do your actions trigger or move from just being normal political activities to collusion with a foreign power that is illegal? In other words, I'm not going to name any names because I'm just throwing out a theory. If you did have prior knowledge that the Russians were going to release those emails, is that illegal, right? And maybe Phil has a better sense
of that. Let him answer that. Phil, go ahead.
When does it trigger? When do you trip into outright collusion and espionage? Because look, if I was as a journalist, what if we had published, the famous emails? I don't think anyone would have said that would have been, a chargeable offense. So I think as we get closer into sort of figuring out exactly what's going on here, you're going to get into some tricky areas about what exactly the line is.
Well, let's let Philip respond to that. Philip, how do you respond?
Well, let me not play a lawyer on TV. I've got a brother and a father who are lawyers, but I'm not. But let me take you inside
the rubber meets the road, though, when people start to when prosecution becomes possible.
Yeah, let's go inside this for just a moment and let's flip it. I think it is perfectly appropriate for members of the Trump campaign to speak with Russian officials. Can you imagine if the Trump campaign had come into office and said, we were nervous about talking to Russians because of potential wiretaps on the Russians, and so we don't know how they think? Completely inappropriate. I think they should have talked to the Russians. Here's the rub. If they were involved in conversations that involved passing Russian information to Guccifer, one of the people involved in in revealing the emails, or participating in conversations with Russians about how to influence the election, that's an agent of a foreign power. You can't do that.
Okay.
Conversation is fine. Influencing an election, not fine.
Okay, so I want to get the Congressman and Kirsten. They've been sitting by patiently. So, Congressman, you first. Sean Spicer maintains that there is no evidence to suggest any collusion took place. But then you hear that people connected to the campaign appeared to give the thumbs up to release the information. The FBI can't prove collusion took place yet. Is that troubling to you, though?
Well, I think at this point we have Clapper, who was very clear, and he said there's no evidence of collusion. Morrell said there's no evidence of collusion. As I listened to Comey, and if you listen to him for 5 hours, he kind of was all over the place with lots of different answers. He was very clever at times, and then when he wanted to talk, he seemed to have no problem talking. Other times he said, no, I can't answer that. But I felt like he said there's no evidence of collusion. I think he may have at one point said yet to probably please some of the gallery. But,
Congressman, I don't think this is right what you're saying here.
The question might be, though, is who are these U.S. officials who say there may have been it? And why are these U.S. officials talking to the press and not to the committee of jurisdiction? And let me say another thing.
You know what? It's interesting that you would say that, because a lot of people are saying that about Nunes today. Why wasn't he talking to officials in his committee and talking to the press? But that's a whole other show. That's a whole other
Can I
subject.
just say one thing?
Go ahead.
Comey did not say that there was no collusion.
No,
he actually went up to the Hill and said he is investigating collusion. That was the whole groundbreaking headline.
But he said so far he hasn't found any. But he said he is investigating the possibility.
The whole investigation is about collusion. So he did not rule it out, obviously.
Well, let's hope it's also about leaks, too.
All right. Well,
it is.
Yeah, it is.
He made that clear, too.
Yeah, but the initial investigation started with collusion, not about leaks. I think the Republicans made it about leaks because the president wanted the leaks investigated. So, Kirsten, doesn't this White House have to find a way to deal with this Russia story in a more credible manner? Because the revelations aren't going to stop here, with shooting off tweets about his predecessor and on and on and on.
I think that this is probably the best they can do. I mean, they don't want to acknowledge that any of this is happening, and so the only thing that they can do is keep sort of attacking the messenger, complaining about anonymous leaks, pretending that Paul Manafort and General Flynn were basically interns on the campaign. General Flynn was a volunteer now, we're hearing, because he wasn't. I mean, like, these people were not integral to Donald Trump's campaign, and it's just all kind of preposterous, But I also do wonder with this, setting the legalities aside, that if they were doing what Pamela Brown was reporting, what that means in terms of, was there a quid pro quo, right? Russia is helping, and they're working, if the allegations are right, and they're sort of helping with this disrupting of the election. Was Russia getting something in return for it, right? Yeah. Why does Donald Trump never criticize Russia? Why did they General Flynn indicate they're going to lift the sanctions? Was something going on here that was a quid pro quo?
When people hear circumstantial evidence, they may say, oh, there's no conclusion yet, but the circumstantial evidence absolutely mean that there is nothing there. We'll talk about that when we come right back.
You tell us. Well, Anderson, the Republican chairman of the House Intelligence Committee shocked everyone by showing up here at the White House for a meeting directly with the president, saying he had new information. Well, he didn't bother to explain what that was to other members of the Intelligence Committee, Democrats particularly there. He did brief a few Republicans there, but he stood outside the West lobby of the West Wing of the White House shortly after he met with the president, and he said this.
Justice Department doesn't have anything to do with this.
So
this is information. This is information that was brought to me that I thought the president needed to know about incidental collection, where the president himself and others in the Trump transition team were clearly put into intelligence reports that ended up at this White House and across a whole bunch of other agencies. And I thought it was important for the president to know this. That's why I briefed the speaker this morning, and I came down here as soon as I could.
Now, it's important to point out, he is leading an investigation into an entirely separate branch of government here. So the sheer idea of him coming down to share information certainly raised a ton of eyebrows. Yes, he was on the he was a supporter of the president. He worked on his campaign committee and transition committee, which isn't all that unusual, but the sheer fact that he showed up here certainly raises questions about his objectivity, and now tonight is throwing the entire investigation up in the air potentially.
And while the president, earlier said he felt partially vindicated, clearly in that tweet tonight it sounds like he's, feeling even more vindicated. Others are saying the timing and the presentation of the information itself is suspect.
The timing is very interesting indeed. Look what else is going on today. It seems like, several hours have, several different things have happened, of course, but the Democrats simply say that they were blindsided by this, that this simply, was coming out of left field entirely. So the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, he had this to say after digesting all of this.
And unfortunately, I think the actions of today throw great doubt into the ability of both the chairman and the committee to conduct the investigation the way it ought to be conducted.
So the question is now, what is coming after this? Now, Democrats, of course, will be calling for an independent investigation. Republicans control the House, so that is not likely to happen. But there is a separate investigation happening altogether here. And the Senate Intelligence Committee did not want to come anywhere near this, it seemed today. They are doing their own investigation. The FBI is also investigating separately. So the fact that this looked like a lifeline for the White House may not be as long of one as they had hoped. All these investigations still underway tonight, despite all of this, Anderson.
Jeff Zeleny, thanks very much. Much more now with our panel. In this incarnation, CNN political analyst Kirsten Powers, Daily Beast senior columnist Matt Lewis, Christine Quinn is back with us as well as Hill contributor and Trump supporter Kayleigh McEnany. Kirsten, what do you, there's so many things to talk about today, but just on this, what do you make of Nunes going over to the White House, what he actually has said, and the president saying it's a partial vindication?
I think it's honestly, the way he's handling it is a little shady. If he had this information that really was that important, then he should have shared it with the rest of the people on the committee, at a bare minimum with Congressman Schiff, and I think that would have a lot more credibility had he done that. I also think if you look at what he's actually alleging here, he's saying that this was all legal, that it was incidental. It's not really vindicating Donald Trump, because Donald Trump had actually accused the president of wiretapping.
Right, and Nunes said several times, this does not, that in no way is there any evidence that President Obama...
Yeah, and then the other thing that I think is concerning is the fact that Donald Trump had said on Tucker Carlson's show, some information is going to be coming out. And now
Sean Spicer reiterated that.
Yeah, and now this information is coming out. So and we don't know how Congressman Nunes got this information. So there are a lot of questions that need to be answered here.
Matt, is it shady?
Took all my points. I think great minds think alike. I think Kirsten's exactly right on that. Donald Trump said that Obama wiretapped him in Trump Tower. This was not, it was incidental, which means that they were not targeting Donald Trump or his administration or his transition team. But I think, look, this really calls into question, this serious question, the objectivity and the independence of this congressional investigation. I think that if I were the chairman of this, if I found out this information, my first move would be to go to the ranking member and say, hey, we've got this. How do you think we should handle it? Should we hold a press conference? Should we alert the other committee members? Should we go to the White House and inform the president? He didn't do any of that. He unilaterally did this. And whether or not there's anything fishy it creates the appearance of impropriety.
But I think you're really missing the forest for the trees here. You know, my Democratic counterparts and my Republican counterparts are concerned at the process by which Devin Nunes relayed this information. None of us are talking about the substance of what he is saying. If it is true, and we have no reason to doubt Chairman Nunes, he is a credible person. If it is true that U.S. citizens were spied on.
No, you didn't say spied.
They were. The procedures. Let me get on the
Let her finish.
Please let me get the facts out.
Okay, but let her
In
finish.
the course of surveying foreign agents, they stumbled upon U.S. citizens who were talking about Donald Trump's family, who were talking about Donald Trump's plans for the administration. That was reported on CNN. So they stumbled upon this conversation. At that point, go read D&I procedures. You stop what you're doing. You do not read any further. Instead of stopping what they were doing, they unmasked the name of that person and disseminated this information about government. Maybe you guys don't think that Fourth Amendment rights apply to people who have an R behind their name, but they certainly do, and that is the substance of this. And the fact that the left isn't outraged over this, it's not only hypocritical, it's deeply disturbing to a democratic society.
Well, what you just put out are not actually the facts as we know them from the information.
They're according to CNN the facts.
No. What the congressmember said, and on one of the earlier segments, a very high-ranking former CIA and FBI officer conveyed and clarified, was that this was allowed, court-ordered, looking into foreign agents, in the course of which happens all the time in different investigations. The person they're watching or listening to has a conversation or an interaction with somebody else. It happens constantly. No. I let you finish. I let you finish. I didn't want to, but I did, so you have to now. So then they identified these other people, and they identified them as American 1, 2, and 3, as is the same way that happens with district attorneys and U.S. attorneys. And then, as an easy procedure, they asked to unmask them. That is all fully allowed and is completely different than the president saying the former president illegally wiretapped
Can you
him.
tell me what the legal qualification for unmasking is? It's committing a crime or having credible intelligence. What crime was committed by the Donald Trump
do we know enough about who was unmasked and what the nature of the conversation was to say whether or not the unmasking was appropriate or not?
According to Devin Nunes, it was not appropriate. He has no information indicating these individuals were committing a crime.
But that doesn't mean they were.
Does it raise any questions to you that Devin Nunes, who is chairman of this committee, which is supposed to be impartial and supposed to be actually investigating potentially people in the White House, would not only first make a public statement, but then go to the very people perhaps that are being investigated with information?
Well, they're being investigated for something different. The collusion with Russians is part of this investigation. What is also part of this investigation is the leaking of information. Right. And what is also part of this information is now the spying of U.S. citizens. And I think Devin Nunes had a fair answer. The Obama administration was aware of this. It is completely within President Trump's rights to know if he or his associates were being spied.
This is damaging if you're a Republican. Right. And you want to keep this from becoming a select committee or an independent prosecutor. What you need to do is preserve, hopefully not the illusion, but hopefully the actual integrity of this process. And I think that what Representative Nunes did, Chairman Nunes did today, undermines that.
Right, you have John McCain saying, look, there should be a
select committee. We need to believe in separation of powers.
I'm confused, though.
This makes it look like he...
Why are you more concerned about the process than the substance of his claims? Are you concerned at all that...
I don't think that they were spying on Donald Trump. I think that...
So you think Devin Nunes lied?
I think that there was...
He didn't say that they were spying on Donald Trump.
No, on U.S. citizens.
But not Donald Trump.
It doesn't matter if it's Donald Trump. A U.S. citizen has Fourth Amendment.
But you just said...
But he's not saying that they were spying on
to believe the Congress member confirmed that. He did not.
He confirmed Donald Trump associates.
How do we know that Nunes is telling... We don't even know who his source is. How do we even...
Maybe this panel...
I'm just supposed to take his word?
Maybe this panel does not know about the Fourth Amendment. No, you have rights in this country.
Right, but Devin Nunes...
I like all of them. I even like the Second Amendment.
It also, I mean... So for a full picture, Devin Nunes was on the transition team for President Trump.
Yeah. This just isn't how you handle it if you want to be seen on the up and up. It just isn't. It's so unusual. And I mean, and you're down there, Kayleigh, so outraged about everything. You're not outraged over the fact that he went to the White House before he even went to the other person on the committee with him that he's supposed to be doing investigations with. And you just also keep saying that Americans were being spied on, and that's not what happened. If something is something, but that's not spying.
Well, by the way, there's only supposedly one unmasking. We don't know, but from
Mike Flynn and others. That was confirmed today.
We don't know the circumstances around why they were unmasked, but at the end of the day, that's not spying. Spying would have been targeting them, and they weren't targeted. It was they were caught incidentally. Kayleigh, seriously, you really need to stop with telling us that we don't care about the laws. That's just not.
But you're acting as if I have faux outrage that a private conversation about Trump's family.
I didn't say it was fake outrage. I think you have legitimate outrage.
Around government. Does it concern you at all that a private conversation was widely disseminated around government? Does it concern you?
If it was done improperly, yes. If there was no reason to do it, but we don't know what happened. We don't know what the circumstances of that were. And I'm not saying you have fake outrage. I think your outrage is legitimate. I'm just saying you don't have similar outrage over other things, like, for example, the accusations against the Trump administration, or Donald Trump and other people.
Which there's no evidence of. We actually have evidence here. We have credible evidence that Mike Flynn's identity was not only unmasked, it was leaked to the Washington Post, a private U.S. citizen's conversation.
Do you find that, I mean, are you as outraged about Russian hacking during the election and the dissemination of emails and your candidate Donald Trump saying, I love WikiLeaks, and reading out all this information from these emails?
I sat on this very panel and I said an attack on the United States doesn't matter, Democrat, Republican, an attack on the DNC is an attack on the RNC, it's an attack on America. I said that, but I'm very concerned that my Democratic counterparts don't seem to care about the Constitution, don't seem to care about the Fourth Amendment, and they are the ones selectively outraged. I sat on this panel and professed outrage.
With all due respect, no one here has trashed the Fourth Amendment. No, we have not, Kayleigh, A. And B,
it's a pretty cheap way of arguing, I would say, to Kayleigh, to call into question the people on this panel, our belief in the Constitution.
Because we're concerned on this panel at the process, Devin Nunes, because this is the argument of the panel, how dare Devin Nunes go to the White House before the Democrats, not how dare U.S. citizens were unmasked and their identities leaked to the Washington Post in the private contents of their conversation in the case of Mike Flynn.
My position right now that I'm most concerned about is that you are putting out misinformation.
It's not
American citizens, we have no evidence they were spied on. It was collateral intelligence. Happens all the time.
We got to take a break on this. Just had former Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort is facing and knocking down new allegations about his ties to Russia. He says the newly reported information is a smear and innuendo. We'll have the details ahead. Tonight, former Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort is responding to new allegations about his consulting work for a client overseas. This time, the former client is a Russian oligarch. The FBI is investigating Mr. Manafort's possible ties to Russia, some of which involve his work for the ousted pro-Russian president of Ukraine. Tonight, fresh accusations and pushback from the man in question. CNN senior investigative journalist Drew Griffin has the latest.
The latest connection between a close Trump associate and Russia was dug up by the Associated Press, reporting a 2005 memo in which Paul Manafort, already working for a Russian billionaire named Oleg Deripaska, was pitching a plan to greatly benefit the Putin government. Manafort confirmed to CNN he did work for Oleg Deripaska, but he rejects the Associated Press interpretation that he was pushing the political interests of Vladimir Putin, including, to quote, influence politics, business dealings, and news coverage inside the United States. I have always publicly acknowledged that I worked for Mr. Deripaska and his company, Rusal, to advance its interests, Manafort told CNN through a spokesman, adding, I did not work for the Russian government. Once again, Manafort writes, smear and innuendo are being used to paint a false picture. A spokesman for Deripaska told CNN, Manafort provided investment consulting services but declined to provide any additional details. Manafort and his Russian billionaire had a major falling out. Court documents show Deripaska funneled nearly $19 million into a Manafort business venture registered in the Cayman Islands in 2007. They invested in a Ukrainian telecom company. But the deal went south, and according to a legal filing, Deripaska's company said Manafort simply disappeared. White House spokesman Sean Spicer this afternoon downplaying any connection this has to the president.
He was a consultant. He had clients from around the world. There is no suggestion that he did anything improper, but to suggest that the president knew who his clients were from a decade ago is a bit insane. He was hired to do a job. He did it. That's it, plain and simple.
It's just the latest Russian headline headache for the Trump administration. CNN has reported the FBI is already investigating possible connections between Trump campaign officials, including Manafort, and Russian officials. Manafort was fired by the Trump campaign on August 19th. That was the same day the FBI announced Manafort was involved in another investigation and another possible connection to Russia. This time it was his consulting work for the pro-Russian former president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, who eventually had to flee his own country, seeking refuge in Russia with Vladimir Putin. The government of Ukraine opened an investigation into possible corruption and money laundering charges against Yanukovych and his political party after Manafort's name appeared on a ledger of $12.7 million in secret payments. Manafort denies he ever took money illegally from anyone in his worldwide consulting business. He denies he pushed any Russian agenda while working in Ukraine. And he now denies that connection with a Russian billionaire had anything to do with a plan to enrich Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Anderson, Paul Manafort is not granting interviews right now, but he did tell us through a statement this afternoon that he looks forward to meeting with...
As we've said, Republican leaders are scrambling tonight to nail down the votes needed to pass the GOP bill to replace and repeal and replace Obamacare. The House votes tomorrow. The stakes obviously high for President Trump, who, as you know, has promised to repeal Obamacare and replace it with something better. Many of his supporters are counting on him to keep that promise, including some who say that without the Medicaid coverage Obamacare has provided them with, they would die. In tonight's America Uncovered, Martin Savage heads to Kentucky. Martin?
Anderson, in Washington, any talk about health care is bound to involve numbers, policies, and politics. And it's really about people, the kind of people you find right here in southeastern Kentucky. If you want to try to put a face on something as big and as complicated as health care, then this is where you come. Whitesburg, Kentucky, population about 2,100, a hard-working town on hard times. It's also home to some of the unhealthiest people in the country, many of whom are treated here at the Mountain Comprehensive Health Corporation, a medical clinic serving thousands annually.
We're talking about the sickest, the poorest, the patients who have the worst diseases in the whole United States. If we were a weather phenomenon, it would be declared a disaster area.
My lungs are shot. I have black lung, COPD.
Last week I had congestive heart failure and kidney failure.
Hypertension, cancer, colon cancer is very high here. I'm a cancer survivor.
The reason many say they are so sick is because they couldn't afford luxuries like doctor visits and preventive medicine. But that changed in 2013 when Kentucky's Medicaid program was expanded under the Affordable Care Act. 400,000 uninsured Kentuckians gained access to health care thanks to Obamacare.
Did it make a difference?
Oh yeah, it made a big difference. It saved his life. For me personally, the insurance was a major lifesaver because I would not have been able to afford the treatments.
Kentucky would seem to be an Obamacare success story. And now, all the Republican talk of repeal and replace has folks here scared.
I think a lot of people aren't sure what to think right now.
Which is understandable, except...
John, you voted for Donald Trump.
I did.
Trump, we were behind Trump.
This part of Kentucky gave Trump some of the strongest support in the state, voting nearly 80% for the candidate who made no secret of the fact he wanted to repeal Obamacare.
What were you thinking?
I'm thinking he can turn this thing around. We've been in a major mess.
He didn't say he was going to wipe out insurance. He said he was going to redo it. Well, I agree. It does to be redone on certain things.
Many here believe for all the good it's done, Obamacare could be better. Lower premiums primarily, and they believe Trump will make it better. Or that's what they hope.
That's exactly what I'm hoping. That's
why
I pulled for him, yes.
You still have that hope?
I do.
20-year-old Brooke Fleming voted for Hillary Clinton and now is scared for her grandmother and many others in her town who she believes are wrong to count on President Trump.
I don't know. It's just crazy that people who are the poorest, who need the most help, are going to vote for somebody who I just feel like won't help us.
In reality, many here aren't just hoping Republicans will keep them covered when it comes to health care. They are literally staking their life on it.
If it goes away,
I don't know. I don't have no backup plan.
It's going to be like a silent death sentence on people like me. Just a matter of time.
Medical experts here say among the other good things that the ACA has provided is that it got people invested in their medical futures. They'd go see the doctor before they got sick. Now with the changes they're proposing in Washington, they fear that people will go back to the old ways, where they would see the doctor in an emergency room.